All right, we're recording. I need to scan my computer, get rid of that. Okay, and my screen is going. So let's get into this. Today we're going to talk about high impact instructional strategies. And specifically, I'm going to talk about how to make what I call a bomb proof lesson plan. Because we all know students are really good at getting off track and steering the conversation in a way it doesn't need to go. So, having a good lesson plan is super important as educators and for students. It's how you're going to impart knowledge in a way that is digestible for them. And it's also going to keep you on track and keep your class on track. So here we kind of have a synopsis of high impact instructional strategies. Plan instructional lessons is the first bullet here. So that's why I think lesson planning is also important. We'll take a look at this blank lesson plan guide, which I've pulled up down here. So this is kind of a mapping tool for how to create your lesson plans. It kind of goes through everything you need. And today we're going to specifically look at these instructional strategies, not all of them individually, but kind of as a whole. So this is a menu they give you. So you kind of have a few options. I would say it's going to be very difficult to incorporate all of these into one lesson. In fact, that is probably going to make it harder for students to learn the content. So definitely just pick a couple or a few, but you need to incorporate these into your lessons somehow. And another important thing here is you need to switch it up. You can't do the same instructional strategies every single class. That's going to get monotonous. That's going to get boring. Students aren't going to be receptive to that. So keeping it fresh by switching it up is going to help them be more engaged in class. It's going to help them be more active in class. And it's going to help them absorb the content that they need to absorb in really intentional ways. Another important thing with lesson planning is you want to make sure that you're using strategies that cater to all three types of learning. So we want to hit auditory, visual, and kinesthetic learners. So these instructional strategies, I like to pick and choose which ones are going to hit each of those learning styles so that I know that all the students who are learning in different ways are getting the content somehow. Another cool thing about this template here is it has the reflection piece. So as an educator, you can use these prompts to evaluate your lesson and kind of fine tune it. And then you can come down here and maybe use some of these boxes in a lesson plan as well. Okay, so again, to recap, we're focusing on how to incorporate instructional strategies in your lesson and how to hit all three types of learning styles. So back to here. Um, when you scroll down on this page, it's going to give you content areas. Okay. Today, we're going to look at science because I feel like science most closely mirrors what I am teaching over at CMU. We have a lot of field time outside of class or outside of campus, I should say. And that I would say is relative to doing a lab or modeling stuff, just like in GSS standards. So we'll look at science, and I'll go through a couple of the other ones just to show you what they have. But we're gonna look at this instructional strategies grid, okay? Because we want to incorporate these into our lessons. So here on this grid, they're going to give you instructional strategies that are high impact on the left, kind of what categories they hit. And yeah, so as you can see, not all of the boxes are X'd out for every instructional strategy, which is another reason that you want to try to sprinkle these in as much as you can in different places. So again, don't be cookie cutter and do the same ones. You got to switch it up in order for all of this to stick for students. Um, so the first thing you're going to need to do is grab a blank lesson plan. This is one that I've been using this semester. I've used several different ones, and I would encourage you to experiment with different lesson plans as well. There's hundreds and hundreds of lesson plan templates on the internet. Word has a bunch already built into it. So just play around, figure out what works for you. I may not keep this one forever. And a lot of times, schools and districts want you to use specific lesson plans that they've created, which is fine. Um, yeah, just figure out what's going to be best for you. So here we have the subject, the teacher, the time, and the date. And that's pretty self-explanatory. The overview section, I like to just type maybe a couple quick sentences. It doesn't have to be super long as to what this lesson is going to look like. This is helpful for if I'm teaching it multiple times or I want to use the lesson semester to semester or year to year. I can give it a quick glance. Or if I'm teaching it multiple times a day, I can just look at the overview again, kind of remember what I'm doing, and move on. So we have the section and the notes. So you want to have your lesson focus and goals. You want to have your learning objectives, materials, structure, activity, instruction, assessment, and then I have a spot for miscellaneous notes. Again, you can kind of curtail these and make them however you would like that makes sense for you. But I feel like this is a pretty good template that includes everything that most people are going to need for their lessons. So here is an example of a lesson that I wrote for the beginning of the semester here. It's for my Leave No Trace class. I'm teaching it with a colleague, Adam, because we are both master educators for Leave No Trace, and because of that, the students get a trainer certification. So that's why we're kind of co-teaching. It's 50 minutes long, which is pretty standard for our university lecture time. Um, and then again, here's the overview, just a few quick sentences, kind of remind me what's going on. Lesson focus and goals. I like to think of this section as more for the educator. What are your goals as an educator for this lesson? What do you want to accomplish with this? Okay, that's kind of for you. Learning objectives, this is for the students. So, what are the students going to be able to do after you've finished this lesson? What do you want them leaving the classroom with? What sort of content and skills are they getting from you during this time? Materials, I like to use a lot of props during my lessons because number one, they're useful, and number two, they're super visual. So you hit that visual learning aspect of it. I would also in here write down any worksheets or like work packets that you have, quizzes, things like that. Um, Make sure you have everything you need to sell yourself up for success. Okay, and then structure and activity. This is where you're going to kind of break it down. I like to use an outline sort of, but I'm adding a lot more detail here as to what the lesson is going to look like. So I break it into the number of parts I'm going to do. So this lesson had 4 parts. And then kind of what is happening with those. So we're going to real quick go back to this chart here. And now I'm going to talk about some of these instructional strategies. The first one that I use in this lesson is a case study. So you can see here I have my case study, and then I have it outlined what that's going to look like. I have a group discussion. We're going to do breakout groups for this one. This is really nice and can add a kinesthetic opponent. So the students stand up, they find new people to work with, they can leave the classroom, they can move to another spot in the classroom, but just getting them to, be a little active so they're not falling asleep or whatever is great. So group discussion and then bring it back together for a full class discussion. And then another thing I want to highlight here, discussion is listed. So this is sort of like a strategy within a strategy. So we're doing a case study and there's a discussion involved. So you can definitely incorporate multiples of these into the same aspect of your lesson plan. Cool. So case study. And then number 2, I kind of give them like a broad picture. Why is this important? Why are we learning about this? And then we go into kind of the more nitty gritty, some deeper dives into the content here. And then these are just like some specific things I'm looking for. And then I have another activity portion where we prepare for our field day to go out and do leave no trace. So uh, we go over expectations, we look at maps, we plan our route, we check local regulations to make sure that we're within the guidelines of the public lands that we're using. We're going to evaluate everybody's gear and clothing. So this gives them like really tangible hands on learning. So this is for the kinesthetic learners. Um, so we got to incorporate that. We're going to go over the food plan, disperse food, stoves, etc. So this is all stuff that we're doing in class to get them ready. Um, yeah, then in the field, I have a scenario for them. So this is part of the assessment that I've built up. And then the scenario, I would think it would be under interactive simulations or maybe role play simulations. You can have them act out the scenario if you want. You can have them just kind of go through the motions of it, whatever. But we're including one of those instructional strategies in there. So again, we've got the case study, we've got group discussion and class discussion, and we've got interactive role play. So we've hit 3 of the instructional strategies within this lesson, which is really solid. I think that's a pretty good number. Again, you don't want to overwhelm your students with too many instructional strategies. Um, and yeah, it's pretty solid. Okay, let's see what else I need to talk about. All right, let's go back here. Um, So again, content area, these are all going to look different based on what you're looking for. Let's just click on drama and theater, for example. It also has an instructional strategies grid. So this is going to be um, quite a bit larger grid. All of these are hyperlinked, by the way, all of these impact strategies. And they will take you to not always CDE pages, but CDE embeds a lot of other like resources from the internet in these pages. So those are useful if you're curious about reading up on some of these and kind of being intentional about including them and what they should actually look like. So anyway, that is my thought on instructional strategies, building a lesson plan. Again, have a good template. Um, be intentional about your lesson plan. Make sure there's enough detail that you can adequately move through this lesson without it going off the rails. You want to make sure you're implementing high impact instructional strategies, and you also want to make sure that you are making this digestible for auditory learners, for kinesthetic learners, and for visual learners. You need to include all of those components.